Let's dive into the Quran itself.
Thank you. Look, I understand this is it's a subject that does upset people, but my aim is not to be unkind, merely to be factually correct. So whatever we discuss, these are things that we will point to the necessary references and sources that anyone can look them up themselves and verify what we say is true. So,
All right.
um, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So to set a foundation, everyone knows of the Quran, and everyone talks about it and discusses it as so this is the ultimate authority within Islam, certainly. However, what most people don't know is that any Muslim who only follows the Quran, who only references it, only lives by it, is considered what's called a Quranist or Quraniyun. Effectively, this person is outside of the mainstream. They're an apostate. And of course, apostasy in Islam is punishable by death. So these people would be on the fringes of Islam. And you'd think that if the Quran holds this level of authority, only that book would be necessary. But the Quran is oddly a very incomplete book. It only contains about 150,000 words, so it's roughly the length of the New Testament. Now, the Bible is a self-contained book. The Quran lacks much of the necessary information. For instance, within the 5 pillars of Islam, if you look at the procedure for the 5 daily prayers, if you're looking for that information in the Quran, you will not find it. It's not there. So most don't know that to understand the Islam, you must not only have the Quran, which is the words of Allah, but also the life of Muhammad. And the life of Muhammad is contained in what's called the Sunnah. Now, the Sunnah is made up of 2 collections of books. You have the Hadith, and these are a collection of reports that describe the words, the actions, or the habits of Muhammad, essentially what he allowed and what he didn't allow, what he did, what he didn't do, what he recommended, what he didn't recommend, and so on. Then you've got the Sirah, which is Muhammad's biography, and this the oldest biography, the most known biography, is that collected by Ibn Ishaq, and it was then edited by Ibn Hisham. So you've got 3 books: the Quran, you have the Hadith collections. Now the Hadith are further broken into multiple different collections. You have the Sahih Hadith, which are Bukhari, which is regarded as the most holy, the most authentic and reliable collection of stories and little chapters, little paragraphs about Muhammad and his companions and his actions. And then you have Sahih Muslim. So Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, they have something like more than 4,000 of these little reports, these paragraph length stories about the traditions and the sayings of Muhammad in these books. You then have a second level of hadith, which are called Hasan, and then you have Da'if, which is weak, and then you have the false ones. Now, you will encounter, if you know about these and start quoting these hadith, that you'll find that, oh no, but those aren't authentic. Well, these are authentic. These are it's compulsory within Islam to believe these and accept these. And the reason you have the first 3 levels is that it cannot be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that a weak hadith is false. So it has been accepted. It is part of the canon. Now, it might be regarded as weak, but it is certainly not false. Now, and you will be told by many Muslims who don't like the fact that you're quoting their sources that these are not accepted, these are false, but that is not true. And the refutation of that is within the Sharia. The Sirah is Muhammad's biography, and this essentially contains his, shall we say, his political history, his history of warfare and his political acts. Islam has multiple meanings. While it is a religion, statistically, only about 16% of the content of the Quran is actually related to, shall we say, religious aspects. And the balance is about politics, law, and warfare. So Islam is really a legal system. It is a political system, it is a social system, and a religious system. Because Muhammad was both a religious prophet in his early prophetic career, he was then a political leader, and then he became a military leader. That is how Muhammad progressed. And to be like Muhammad, you have to follow his progression. So the Hadith and the Surah together form what is called the Sunnah, the way or the path of Muhammad, the example of Muhammad. Like in Christianity, you have the Bible and the example of Jesus, the life of Jesus. So you have these books. You have the Quran, which is the word of Allah, the literal eternal word of Allah, and the Hadith and the Sirah, which contain the life of Muhammad. The Quran has about 150,000 words. The Sirah is just under 300,000 words, about 290,000 words. The Hadith of Bukhari is a bit over 640,000 words, so it's more than 4 times as long as the Quran. The Hadith plus the Sirah is the Sunnah, and the Sunnah plus the Quran are the primary sources that make up Sharia, the Islamic sacred law. So they are the primary sources for Islamic theology and for the Sharia. Now, the Sunnah is the record of the teachings, the deeds, the sayings, and the permissions and disapprovals of Muhammad, as well as reports about his companions. These would be the equivalent of the apostles of Jesus, right? So when they speak of the rightly guided caliphs, these are the first 3 caliphs after Muhammad died who took over Islam and were responsible for its propagation. And Sunnah is defined as the path, the way, a manner of life, which makes Islam a social order as well. It's a civilization that competes with Western civilization. And as you study the sources, it seeks to obliterate it and replace it. So, and a final point is that Muhammad is considered to be the ideal Muslim, the perfect man, and his example is to be followed. So it is the highest aspiration of all good Muslims to follow the example of Muhammad and live as he lived. And his example is found within the Sunnah.
All right. So, and then the Sunnah are the records of the teachings, deeds, sayings, permissions, and disapprovals of Muhammad. Do you want to go more into that?
Let me tell you what, let me set the foundation, finish setting the foundation,
Sure.
Then we can get into some of the specifics there, okay? So very often when you do talk about the Quran, you read a verse and you see a verse in the Quran that's unpleasant. People talk about the 106, there's actually more than that, but the violent verses within the Quran, and they quote them. Well, the Quran often lacks context. And you often hear the argument, you're using that out of context. Now, this argument is very, very common, and it's used to delegitimize the use of the very uncomfortable passages within the Quran. And it is true, the Quran often makes statements that are very much out of context. Now, these books, the Hadith and the Sirah, provide the necessary context to support what is said within the Quran. They flesh it out. So if you have a statement in the Quran that you want to utilize, you can find more about it in the Hadith. You'll find corroborating evidence based on the life of Muhammad. And you can also look in the Sirah. Along with that, there are what's called the commentaries, which are written by very, very highly regarded scholars of Islam. And these are called the tafsir. So if you want to look up further information with regards to a particular Quranic verse, you can go to the tafsir collections. So you've got things like there's Tafsir Ibn Kathir, very popular, Tafsir al-Jalalain, to mention 2 that are very, very popular. So you can then refer to all of these sources. And if you look at a verse, you can go to the tafsir and see what does it say about that verse, what context does it provide. And there's numerous different tafsir authors that are highly regarded. And often you'll find that the tafsir goes into further depth with regards to that. And so when you've got the Hadith, the Sirah, the Tafsir, the Quran, they all merge, and the Sharia on top of that. When you have all of those as sources that link to a particular subject, then it's rock solid. You know that this is what it means. There's no doubt, because all of these sources align.